Well, good morning. Painting. We're getting fast to that point that we've only got one or two subjects to complete before we start to fill out in its entirety the amount of work that we have for the estimation. So, first of all, this is just a straight snip image of what I've written about painting, and it simply says we need to calculate the application across the entire home. There are many shortcuts that builders take. You can check in Court Logic what it costs for a room to paint. Several years ago, my brother-in-law were having a discussion about that. I brought it up and I said, well, what do you allow for painting? And he goes, just straight off the top of his head, he goes, $300 a room. And if it's a bigger room, 600. And if it's massive, I double that again up to 1200. And how do you become so sure that you've got the right price? And in Greg's case, he had been building houses for 25 years, costing him and everything else like that. Right at the very start, I said, whenever you do a project, you should have on one sheet how much you've allowed, on another sheet how much it actually costs to the dollar. Okay. And then you can always adjust how much you allow, whether you need to allow more, what factors cause an increase. So, for example, we did a job up at Brownhill Creek at the site of the first school. That was at Brownhill Creek, and everything was low VOC products, so natural paint. Okay, double the price, if not more. Okay, and so therefore, when we look at our specifications, we need to double check to make sure that we're using the correct paint for the job. And I can guarantee you, an architectural house will be much more cost than your production builder who just does a bare wall paint job. Vast difference, and so that's huge. All right, so last week we actually worked on, in the face-to-face class, we worked on all of the plasterboard, and we ended up with some calculations around the total area that we're going to use for painting. All right, so this section through here, we'll just get rid of the snip. And so first of all, in the wet areas, these are the actual wet area sizes, and I'm just going to highlight these three and turn them into a square area. And interesting that we've got a laundry situation here. Whether this actually calculates for that 10 square meters, can't remember. See, to me, that's like 5 and 1. There's only about 6, so there's been more allowed here. But paint's cheap. Okay, so pretty much 4 litres of paint will cover you between 50 and 60 square meters. So, for example, if we just added those up in our head and said that was 8, that was 6, and that was 10, all right, we got 18, 24. So we could paint all the ceilings in the wet areas with a very good quality paint for 4 litres of paint. So it's not a huge amount of material cost. It's more to do with labor cost. Now, the other factor that we can take into consideration um, is it being sprayed? Is it being rolled? What is the actual texture required? Um, is it different colors from the walls? Huge factors which increase labor considerably. Um, Now, spraying has always been around, but we now have airless sprayer that are just unbelievable. Now, laundry walls, these are the only walls in the wet areas that we're going to cover. And the reason for that is that the only tiling that is in the laundry is above the kitchen cabinetry or the laundry cabinetry. So it's a band of tiles, 600 high, across the entire length. Now, you wouldn't take that off the paint area. First of all, you'd paint it, get that all stuff done, and then in there and finish it off. So um, I'm going to leave that to you to actually go through and work that out. And this is exactly what the class did last night. They just went through. And now, what's the other thing that we could do? We could actually look at the total square meters of our plasterboard and use that as our cumulative figures, which would be maybe okay. So if I actually went through here and just highlighted this as a red total and works out around about 30 square meters, if we quickly buzzed up to um, the wall tiles. eh, Then we actually get into second fix, um, and then we start to actually have a look at ceiling insulation. Now, cornice length, I haven't finished all of these, but we could actually go through to our wet areas way up here. Kitchen, laundry, ensuite, wet area walls. Okay, we could actually go through and check all of those, what we've actually calculated. And I don't know whether of these have been done or not, probably have. All right, now notice, all right, so we've got 32, all right, in the bath area. Okay, so this is 4 walls. Now, the problem with that is wet area walls are tiled. So therefore, do we need to allow that amount or not? And I would suggest that we don't. And so check your specifications. And in this case, we'll just put a white on here and get rid of it. Ensuite, okay, that's tiled. And then there's that laundry area. And then you've got your kitchen. So we could actually use some of these square meter figures. Now, um, they're not hard to do. You notice I've rounded these all up to sheet sizes. This is probably the only one that's nowhere near a sheet size. Um, and then we could actually use that as part of our painting. Um, so whenever we're doing any of our estimation, don't be afraid to go back to areas that you've already worked out, because that's half your job done for you. Doesn't mean you have to spend some due diligence making sure that you're right, but actually double check. Now, the specification is that we're going to have tiles over all of the wet areas. So that means ensuite bathroom, no walls need painting. Okay. So therefore, um, it's a suggesting thing. Now, the only thing for laundry walls, yes, because we are only tiling an area about 600 high. And so this is actually going to be way too much. So I'm going to get rid of that figure. Of course, I know what will happen. And that's half the students will put that in there and you'll be totally wrong. So you need to choose out of these what area on the laundry we need to cover, because that's a wall area. Now, what about paint? We need to think about a paint that's actually going to withstand the actual heat and the water moisture that's in the air, especially if you've got a dryer in there, and you can't just use basic paint. All right, so that's a big deal, and so that's something that we could actually have a look at. All right, over here, standard walls. All right, and so we're talking about, we need to be a little bit careful here. Um, we've already looked at the laundry up here, so therefore we don't actually need this one in at all, but we do need the living, bedroom, entry, and again, like 3.6 by 1520 for the entry. Oh, I don't think that that's actually enough. So there needs to be some more figures there. Now, I'm suggesting that these are the subheadings. So whatever you worked out for bedroom 2, you put it here. Whatever you worked out for the living, you put it here. Now, the laundry, you've already covered up here. So entry, bedroom 1, and then that will be your total figure that you'll get there. All right, these are all the ceiling sizes approximately. You can check these sizes and come up with a total figure, put that there. Now, if you do that, put a little note up here, just, just basically go in there and say, you want to actually put in a little note or something like that. And I know what you've done. Now, garage, all the actual cornice. Now, you guys have already worked out the cornice. So straight away, it would not be all that difficult for you to pop in here just your size, all right, for each area all the way through. Should not take that long. Most of these guys had this knocked over by 8:30, and many of them had it rolled over by 7:30 and were working on other parts of the estimate. All right, so these are just sizes. Don't just blindly use that. Check what you've done in the actual plasterboard, and officially what we should end up with total painting cornice length, and you can actually put that into there. And I'm just going to do this one. I don't even know if it's been done. No, it hasn't. Oh, there might be something there. Let's have a look. Uh, no guarantees. All right. So let's see. I'm just going to leave that there. Let's see what you came up with, and let's see what we have here. All right. So it's a red total, and then you could just simply probably take it to the uh, 2 decimal places, not 3. We're not actually making a space rocket or anything of that nature. And so we can just simply go through there and go, rightio, there it is there. Door jambs. These are all the sizes of the door jambs. Okay, so you basically have to work out all the total door jamb lengths, put that there. Now you've already done a lot of this in the second fix, so you just come through and put in the total area of the door jambs, the total area of the doors. Now, every door is, you've got 2 meters and 87. In actual fact, most doors are 2040. Okay. And then you've also got a little bit of edges and stuff like that to look at. So work out how many internal doors you've got. And whether they're 720s or 820s, and because some of these figures are less than perfect. Ordinarily, all right, so a standard door, and I'm just going to put it in here, 2040, and it is by 820 or 720. Okay, and so quite simply, the deal is, and I'm wondering if this 1.711 is actually a calculation of that. So if we just bring up the our little takeoff over here, our little calculator, uh, 2.040 by 0.820, and we end up with 1.67. I'll drag that out the way there, and for whatever reason, because it's gone 2 meters and 87, but it's actually 2040 for a standard door. So you've got 1.67. So every door has 2 faces and it's got some edges. So make sure you allow a little bit more than that, and perhaps that's what happened here. All right, and then you can just work out your square area. So if you've got 10 doors, you're going to need 17, enough paint to cover 17 square meters. That's as simple as what it is. Think about squares and angles and all those types of things. Now, the other thing that's important is how many coats. So in the good old days, in the 70s, and this is how far painting's gone down the gurgler, you would actually have, first of all, and I used to help the painters do this when I worked for Frickers. They would actually use spack filler and they would grain fill all the timber. So you can imagine Meranti architraves. When you look at any Meranti, it's got thousands of little fine micro grains in it. And so the job would be to actually coat the whole lot with spack filler, not thick, just drag a scraper over it and you'd fill up all those little gaps, and then you'd sand that with some very fine grit, 500, to make sure that it's actually clear as, and then they would give it an undercoat, and then they would actually go through and do a final coat, and sometimes up to 3 coats. Now, today, we get out there and we just give it one coat and a lick and a promise and go, yeah, that's okay. But is it up to standard? And so that's something you've got to consider. So I'm going to get rid of this fellow here. But again, you can look at those. These are not set in stone. I've just left them in there because it gives you a bit of an overview of what you can actually use to calculate. And so if you've got 9 doors, then you need to actually think about that, what you're going to get here. How many lineal meters of fascia and barges? Okay, and so you need to actually come up with those lengths. And so just check that. They should be pretty right. And if we actually looked here under red, nope, got nothing. Okay, nope. So haven't done these at all. And the reason for that is because all you need to do is go back to your carpentry as to how many fascias, how many barges, how many lineal meters of eaves. Okay, and that looks like it's been done, but it's not. So, how many square meters of plaster reveals? Now, around about 19 from memory. So check that. Now, veranda. So this is how you would actually do that. You've got a veranda that has 13 rafters, 1800 long. Now they're going to be actually coated, and think of a rafter size 90 by 45. So here we are back on our calculator. So you've got two 90s each side. So there's 180. Okay, so 180, and then you've got another 90 plus 90, okay, equals 270 mil of paint, 0.270. All right, and then you would actually times that by the number of rafters and their total length, which is 1800. And so let's just clear that, and we just go 13 by 1.8 by 0.270, and you've got 6.3, so let's say 6.4 square meters of coverage for one coat. So therefore you would have to think about, well, we should at least have 2 coats. So with today's acrylics, that would be how a lot of that would work. And so again, veranda beam size 120 by 45, and so there's a bit of stuff there. You got 120 by 2, you see where I've done here. 45, you've got 45, but you've got the top and the bottom. So what should actually happen here is in here, we just go by 2. All right, and just give it a bit of a space and give that one a bit of a space. All right, and that will give us that beam. Then we got our post sizes. Now, these are 150 by 150. So that means that for each of those posts, you have 600 mil, right? Because you got 4 by 150 for each post. And so there it is there, 2.7 by 600. And you've got the same here. Now I've come up with something like that, 1.62 by 2. All right, see how that works. External doors, there's the sizes. You can actually utilize that and then work your way through how that would work out. All right, should not take you long. And so we're getting very, very fast, approaching the end of the actual takeoff. All right, so our next video will be on paving. That's not terribly difficult. I'll keep it separate because when it goes up into semester 1 2023 recordings, it won't be all officially, but what I will show you is the actual specification for painting. It's not dramatic or anything like that, or for paving for that matter. And we'll go from there. Okay, guys, thank you very much.